When John Matthews walked out of the prison gates that bright summer morning, he was filled with a mix of hope and fear. He had served 5 long years for a crime he insisted he didn't commit. He dreamt of rebuilding his life, reconnecting with his family, and regaining the home he had worked for all his life. But what he found when he arrived at his neighborhood was a nightmare far worse than he could have imagined. The house that once belonged to him, his safe place, his refuge, was gone. Not just messy or broken, but completely emptied. Furniture, electronics, even his grandfather's antique clock had vanished. The garden he had planted, the small joys of homeownership, were replaced by silence and an empty driveway. Neighbors, who had watched the family for years, were whispering among themselves. And then came the whispers he dreaded the most. The person responsible wasn't a stranger. It was his wife, Melissa. Melissa had told everyone in the neighborhood that John wouldn't be returning, that he was gone for good. While he was behind bars, she had sold the house, liquidated his assets, and even taken money from his bank account. Every trusted promise, every vow, had been shattered. John didn't know whether to cry, scream, or storm into her new apartment to demand answers. But he knew one thing. He had been betrayed in the worst possible way. He first confronted her at a nearby cafe. She sat there casually, sipping coffee as if nothing had happened. The woman he had loved and trusted, the mother of his 2 children, looked him in the eyes and smirked. "I had to move on," she said coldly. "You were gone. I had bills. I did what I had to do." John could feel the blood rushing in his veins. The injustice of it all, the audacity. He could hardly believe the person he trusted most could betray him so thoroughly. But John wasn't one to let life just happen to him. He had been through prison, and he knew how to fight. He began gathering evidence: bank statements, property sale documents, testimonies from neighbors who had witnessed Melissa moving his belongings out, and even video footage from her new apartment building. What happened next shocked the entire neighborhood. John didn't call the police immediately. Instead, he orchestrated a plan that would expose Melissa in a way she could never deny. He began speaking to the community, quietly sharing the truth with neighbors who had been friendly with her. The story spread quickly. A wife who betrayed her husband while he was in prison, selling off his home and possessions without his consent. The whispers became chatter. The chatter became outrage. Meanwhile, John took legal action. He filed claims for fraud, theft, and property disputes, and within weeks, the courts were involved. Melissa tried to fight back, claiming she had managed the property while John was away. But John had every receipt, every document, every witness lined up. In the courtroom, the tension was palpable. The judge, looking stern, listened as John recounted the betrayal. "I didn't just lose my house," he said, voice shaking. "I lost trust, I lost years of my life, and I lost my dignity. I want justice, not revenge, but justice." Melissa's defense fell apart under scrutiny. The evidence was overwhelming. Every transaction she made, every item sold, every dollar withdrawn, it was all documented. By the end of the trial, John was not only able to reclaim a portion of his property, but also secure compensation for the emotional and financial damage she had caused. The neighborhood, once quiet and wary, watched as justice unfolded. People who had initially pitted Melissa now whispered about the consequences of betrayal. John's story became a cautionary tale, shared across streets, social media, and eventually local news outlets. But the most powerful moment came when John returned to his home, not the empty shell it had been, but slowly rebuilt, reclaimed, and restored. Standing in his living room, he realized that while Melissa had stolen possessions, she could never take his resilience, his dignity, or his courage. The story of John Matthews reminds us of one harsh truth. Sometimes, the greatest betrayals come not from strangers, but from those closest to us. And sometimes, the most powerful revenge is simply reclaiming your life and proving your strength. Melissa, now infamous in the community, would never forget the man she betrayed. John, on the other hand, walked away with something far greater than material possessions. He walked away vindicated, resilient, and unstoppable.